Hello everyone. Good morning. Brian Jennings here, the Critical Sorcerer. Back at it again with my needle and thread, attempting to stitch my fabric together. What I'll say is that the stitching kind of looks like shit, and I know what I want. I know how I want it to look. And so it's just about being patient, you know. Eventually I'll get to where I can like go fast. And then of course I'm gonna show it to my family and see if someone can show me how to use a sewing machine. I didn't want to use a sewing machine, but the stitching will just look so much better. And so that's the idea. That's the idea. I decided on the name Critical Sorcerer for a particular reason. Right? There's two schools in esotericism, essentially. Light and dark, heaven and hell. And so, you can prescribe to which is the school that I prescribe to Manly Palmer Hall, on the side of light. Right? Communion with the deity. Or you can prescribe to the school of Aleister Crowley, right? Which is who Quentin is named after in my novel, Building a Coven. And so, in so many ways, they are both saying the same thing. That's true. But the tactics, right, like how you use it. And then of course Crowley had his critics, and he was wearing, I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but Spare, Austin Osman Spare, saw him walking through town, this ridiculous getup that he claimed gave him some sort of power of invisibility. And Spare looked at him and said, you know we can see you, right? My point is that there's this tendency to maybe take yourself too seriously in this thing. Right? And I think that Crowley fell into that. Though I do acknowledge that he was a real scholar. Right? And my point is that I think Quentin takes himself too seriously. Right? So, I'm not critical of sorcery per se, if you're using it for the right reasons. Right? The crudest levels of sorcery is what I'm doing now. Right? And then, this chemistry, right, is combining elements within creation to make something new. Right? A transistor radio, right? These are all alchemical transmutations of a kind. And then, of course, the very highest, most rarefied level is the psychic clairvoyant, the medium. What do I gain in the telling? What do I get out of this? Newsflash, nothing. What? I'm gonna, I get something in claiming that I'm an asshole? Right? But this is a dangerous psychological condition that he's created in both of our minds. Not just in my mind, in his mind too. And so I have to talk about it because, right, I live in palpable fear that he's going to say, nope, I'm at my breaking point, and send someone to murder me. Is it unethical? Is it evil? Yes. But again, right, he takes himself too seriously. Right? This man remote views me every day for 2 months, sees me write probably 50,000 words in that time. And when I stick a letter up to his face at Tribeca, right, he thinks that it's appropriate to turn his back on me. Right? This is my point. This is my point that intuition is a two-way street. Right? that he wanted something out of me. Like, sure, he wanted me to be strong, all that. Like, yeah, like, I get that. I get that. Claim your seat at the high table. I wanted him to take my letter. Right? I don't need to be a movie star. I had a good job. Yeah, it demanded everything of me, but it paid me $100,000 a year. $150,000 a year. Right? I've noticed I have a tendency of swallowing a little too much. Anyway, it's probably from the dairy. I don't like to put sugar in my coffee, but I'll have a little bit of creamer, flavored creamer. Anyway, right? My point is that I chose my side. The side of simple truth, simple honesty. Yeah, like Robert De Niro. Yeah, Brad Pitt. Like, yeah. Look. Right? I'm not in that world. I could have been. Right? But I'm a trusting, loving guy. So, when he, right, set out to humiliate me and destroy my mind, I trusted him because I felt bad about Tribeca, because I wanted to give him what he wanted. But I didn't want to be intuitive anymore. Intuition got me all the way there. I wanted him to take my letter. I wanted him to tell me what he wanted. I wanted him to look me in the eye. That's all. If he would have just stared me down like I was staring him down, I would have broke almost instantly. Instead, right? He wants to stick his nose up. He wants to say, "Oh no, you be telepathic." Right? And I know, just this last time, like, sure. That's maybe true. But what I'm saying is that I don't believe that. I think that he plays fucked up mind games with everyone in his films as much or as little as he wants. Right? How many times has an actor in a Quentin Tarantino film said, "Oh, I'm thinking about Quentin right now," and then he calls him, he or she calls him, and he says, "Hey buddy, I was thinking about you too." And he's going, tee hee 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 hee. Right? This is serious powers, right? This is not a fucking joke. This is not a pastime. Right? He don't want to heal the sick. He don't want to do anything practical with that power. He wants to use it for sport, personal gain, which is, per Manly Palmer Hall standards, the definition of malevolence. Right? So, I have no choice but to talk about it. This has never been about me, proving some point, me getting famous on the back of humiliating Quentin. I know that's what he thinks, right? That he could have, right? Like, he didn't have to compel my full spiritual unfoldment, right? Like, that's the point. That's the point. Right? We never had to be in the middle of this, where we're both just like, well, we can each kill each other. That's where we're at. Right? That he could have paid me nothing for my scene. Been simple and honest, looked to his wife, looked to everyone around him. Right? And so now I find myself thinking about this interview with, I thought about this yesterday, this interview with Sam Jackson I saw last year when I was on the street in LA in the middle of my saga. And the joke that he made about the movie Critic, about how he's supposed to do something, but he doesn't even know where Quentin is now. And of course, perhaps he was in Jerusalem, perhaps he was just up the street in Mulholland Drive. Right, but my point is that he knows who I am. All those cats know who I am. Quentin doesn't exist in a vacuum. Right? But what he didn't tell them is that he only spoke to me through the psychic crucible of the mind's eye. I spoke to him like via letter. Right? So, right? He turned Robert De Niro Con, into an exercise in clairvoyance, and I opted out. Right? Again, I gained nothing. But this is a dangerous condition psychologically. Right? Imagine what he thinks. I can't even imagine it. I would never be so arrogant as to assume that it's in any way healthy psychologically to remote view someone for hundreds of hours. This is the pinnacle of hubris. Right? And so this is why we're talking about it. This is why there's nothing left but to talk about it. Right? I don't want to die. Right? He feels that my every breath is some sort of mocking of him. Right? And so, right, sure, like I wanted a career in the arts. Right? I still do. I'm a good artist. Right? But I don't have to play fucked up mind games to be a good artist. Right? That's my right. That's my right to be simple and honest. Right? So, this is why we're talking about it. Right? Eventually, like, something's gonna give, right? Like, eventually he'll release that movie in some iteration. And if and when it has my scene in it, which it does, I'll have recourse to go to a lawyer and say, this is my scene. And he'll pay me. Or, I'll end up with money some way, enough to sue him, right? And that's what he wants. That's what, like, all of this is still going on because he doesn't want to pay me without suing him. Then he feels like I'm bullying him in some way. That's like, oh, this is how it's done. This is how it's done in show business. But we're ruthless. And I don't buy that, right? And so that's why I started talking about it every day. Right? And that's why we're talking about it now. Because all that's left is evil. There's nothing left but evil. I don't want to fight. Doesn't interest me in any way. I have nothing but love for him and his family. Right? It wasn't my design. Put a bunch of psychological baggage on his little girl. That was his doing, right? And so what's the point that I'm making when I say that? I mean that he's said a bunch of awful shit. Said, oh, this is my daughter, right? And so now he has this little girl. Right? Number one, that was an electric braid of intention that washed over her psyche, right? And has diffused within her mind now. And there's no sort of test that can adjudicate, that can tell us like what that's going to do, right? But in any event, right? Every time he looks at his little girl, every time Daniela looks at that gorgeous little girl, I'm sure, very sweet, very loving, right? They're gonna have that thought. Oh, ha 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 ha! You're not really a bitch, but I damn sure said you were. You're not really a slut who gets pissed on, but I damn sure said you were. Right? You understand what I'm saying, right? That the mind is a subtle thing, right? It's an electrical thing, right? And so when they think about these things, right, no matter how shrewd they are in their thinking patterns, right, that they're sending out electrical phenomenon that are going into her brain and she's processing it instantly. right? And so this is my point when I say he has to spend the rest of his life being devoted to good works, right? Because if he is devoted to good works, right, that if he's devoted to goodness, for goodness sake, if he's saying, oh, I want to give back to the poor, I want to set up nonprofits for underrepresented communities, etc., 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 all these things, then, right, that's what she sees, that's what she feels, right? That if he maintains this level of subtle, like, oh, I'm a famous guy, so I can't like be in the public, I have to be like, I'm like above the fray, and I'm a cunning, like I have cunning in my heart, I have guile in my heart, right? Then that's what's going to be imbued within both of their children psychologically. That's like, this is not up for debate. That's what's going to happen. Right? He could say that I have no idea what I'm talking about, right? That's like, these are the two positions, I've said it 1,000 times, I'm insane and he's evil. Right? That's where we're at. And so I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight. I'm not fighting. I never have been. That all of this stems from that awful act of cowardice that I hated myself over, right? But now, seeing how he behaved, no. And for everyone around him to just say, well, that's our Quentin. So full of cunning. Well, I'm just going to cut that. It's really sad. It's really sad. Right? And this is my fear as far as like corporate espionage, right? Corporate evil. Right? This is why I'm talking about it. Right? Doesn't interest me at all to talk about this. Right? I'm sick of talking about it. But unfortunately, I have to. Because, right, Quentin and I have this case study in remote viewing. Right? Remember the square law? If you remote view anyone who's living, you have a connection that is now 4 times stronger than it was previously. And that's after 1 time. If you do it again, it's 9 times. Right? And if you do it again, it's 16 times. On and 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 on. Right? This man's remote viewed me 1,000 times now. I suspect he doesn't anymore. Right? Perhaps my emails have been doing something. Right? All I can do is persist, right? Like, I have the right to talk about it. Right? Like, oh, got me good. Got me good. I get it. You're a ruthless Hollywood badass. Sure. So, right, it's just really sad how ugly and evil it all is, right? And how unwell he is, right? For all that I'm unwell, and it's hard, right? The weekends are always difficult. That he is, right? He has created this condition in his mind, right? Oh, ha 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 ha, right? It's a joke to him, for sure, right? He's always known, as far as esotericism, that the things that people refer to as psychic and clairvoyant are the same things that people refer to as magic and sorcery in centuries past. They're not similar things. They're the same thing. It's the engendering of an electrical field through intention. The conscious awareness of the adept, right, engenders a novel neuronal response which creates a braid of electric phenomenon known as a thought force, which ripples out into creation just like a cell phone signal. The brain, right? A cell phone is a crude brain. A brain is a very sophisticated cell phone. These are, right, that all innovation stems from some primal truth within man. And so the games that he plays at have been touched on for millennia. And you can use that same power, right, to heal the sick. And I suppose that's what I would like to do. And I have to establish myself first. But I want to go to a hospital and say, oh, I can, let me speak to the worst of the bunch. And I have tactics. I know exactly what to do. Right? Would it work? Would it not work? My point is that it's a better expenditure of psychic energy. Right? That this is, right? And of course he's from Los Angeles, right? Of course they give Quentin Tarantino Day. Because, right? All things dark arts is all things LA. Again, right? All I can do is endure. All I can do is talk about it. Right? I'm insane and he's evil. Right? Does he have to pay me before they can release that movie? I suspect so. Unless they're all just have no morals. Like, and that's a possibility. They could be nothing but corporate ambition. That's true. Like, that could be true. Seems ridiculous to me. At some point, right? Ethics has to come into the discussion. Right? Otherwise, Harvey Weinstein would have never gotten arrested. Right? He made a bunch of money. But he's also a weird, angry creep. And so, right? I didn't think that's what Quentin is. But he's proven it. And so what do I mean? I mean that if he was cool, right? Like if he was actually cool, he would have paid me immediately and said, you blew it. Here's money for your scene. Go anywhere else. Hollywood ain't for you. Right? That's what a cool guy does. Right? That's it. There's nothing else to consider there. Right? No machinations, no conniving. Right? Like that was the moment. You turned your back. Thanks for the letters. See you never. And then I would have been like, damn, I blew that beautiful shot. And never talked about it ever. But now, right, as a result of this campaign, I have no choice but to talk about it forever. Right? Because this is my life. This is my sanity. Right? That he can always deny it. Right? But eventually, right, someone's going to start saying, this guy's been saying the same story for a long time now. Like, why shouldn't we look into it? There's nothing saying he's not telling the truth. Because I am telling the truth. And I suspect that's what Trey Anastasio and David Berlinski are reckoning with in a palpable way. That they can trust me, a devoted fan, or they can trust a famous guy. Right? Famous for the violence in his films. Right? And so in that way, like, oh, was I naive? Like, no, I don't think that. I don't think that. Just because there's violence in your art, that doesn't mean that you're violent. Right? Was Francis Bacon violent? Was Edgar Allan Poe violent? Right? No, how could I ever assume that he would say, oh, this guy doesn't want to respect it, I'm going to use wisdom to destroy him. This is the pinnacle of evil. This is not, right? This is the ugliest, most evil campaign that anyone can possibly endeavor. Right? And this is why I have to talk about it. So, see what's good in your life. All of life is expressing a noble divinity. And when you hearken to that divinity in yourself, in your actions, in your psyche, in your heart, in your soul, it brings you closer to that abstract intellectual divinity that shapes our ends. There is nothing to pray to. Blasphemy is a victimless crime. All these things. But God is a pure abstraction, something that can never be manifested. Right? This is Ein Sof Our in the Kabbalah. I'm inclined to believe that the emanations of the Kabbalah on some level must be true. Right? That all of these cats that wrote these treatises, right, the Zohar, the Sefer Yetzirah, right, that they were very smart. Right? For sure, the Book of Formation, the Sefer Yetzirah, must be true. Only on some level, right? It's important, like, we have to make these distinctions, right? Right? The literal truth is not the written truth, right? Metaphors, right? So when you understand that when you behave with love and charity in your heart, then you're behaving like God, because all of creation is a giving. Then you understand how best to behave in the world. Right? So, Quentin thinks me a pretentious asshole because he was showing me how he loves me. And in that way, my knowing failed me. Right? And I hated myself for months. But I can't, right? I can't feel sorry for myself anymore. I have to move on. Right? And so yes, he's done permanent damage to my psyche. Right? But he's also done damage to his psyche. It doesn't matter what he tells people at his hip dinner parties. So I have to talk about it until I see some palpable resolution. Right? WME doesn't want to talk to me, right? No one wants to talk to me, so I'll talk about it online. It's fine. There's no reason we can't embrace, right? There's no reason we can't say, oh, I hated you, but I love you now because you're my brother, you're my prodigal son, right? Which must be true. He's my spiritual father, I'm his prodigal son. Right? But as long as we're like rooted in pride and ugly malevolence and all these things, we'll never get anywhere. It'll just maintain this hideous, ugly psychic siege that I have no choice but to talk about. Right? Like, he can torture me whenever he wants. Like, yep, got the message. You're an evil guy. Right? You can always deny it. Right? You turned all my heroes against me. Like, oh, what a cool guy. Did I turn people against him? Like, honestly, I doubt that. He lies to all of them. He shows them a document that doesn't exist. Right? But if I did, right, those fucking people aren't cool anyway. They're also weird, angry, right? Occultist. Like, that's all this is. It's just an ugly psychic siege. So, know that life is not an accident. All of life emerges out of an abstract and noble divinity. And when you're still, you live close to God the Father. All the best.